On Zombie Reddit, today's story is...
My brother hid my wife's infidelity for 5 years, and when I found out, he destroyed 2 families. His final betrayal in public left me speechless. I never thought I would find myself in this situation, living a reality that I still find difficult to assimilate. My existence, previously so predictable and balanced, has fallen apart in ways impossible to anticipate. I am now 38 years old and have been married to Sarah for 12 years. We are the parents of Emily, 10, and Max, 8. I always believed that our relationship worked well. Of course, like any couple, we had our disagreements, but generally I thought we were happy. At least I felt that way. I've always had a special connection with my brother Tom. He is 40 years old, 2 years younger than me, and has been married to Linda, his teenage sweetheart, for 15 years. They have a 13-year-old daughter named Sophie. Tom and I grew up in a family environment where we deeply valued loyalty. We were inseparable, we shared secrets, and we supported each other. We weren't the only ones who maintained this bond. Our respective families also spent a lot of time together. Our children grew up playing with each other. We celebrated holidays and birthdays all together. Everything seemed perfect. Looking back now, perhaps therein lay the problem. The appearance of perfection. I was so focused on my own life and on maintaining this image of an ideal family that I did not perceive the fractures that were forming. I did not realize that my wife was keeping a secret, and even worse, I was unaware that my brother was also involved in hiding it. Everything collapsed during a family gathering, the celebration of my nephew's birthday. It was a typical, carefree day, the kind we used to enjoy. The children were running around in the garden, while the adults chatted in a relaxed manner. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until I noticed Sarah and Tom talking discreetly in a corner. At first I didn't think anything of it. They had always got on well. I mean, why wouldn't they? We were like one big close-knit family, weren't we? However, later, as I passed by them on my way to the kitchen to get drinks, I heard something that made my blood run cold. Sarah was whispering something to Tom. Her voice was low but intense. At first, I couldn't make out the words, but as I got closer, I caught the end of their conversation. Sarah was talking about an extramarital affair. Her own infidelity. I stood still. My ears were ringing as I tried to process what I had just heard. There was no possible misinterpretation. Sarah was not talking about someone else's infidelity. She was talking about her own. I stood there, hiding behind the doorframe, trying to regain my composure. How long had this been going on? Who else knew about it? Why was she telling my brother of all people? The more I listened, the more the awful truth was revealed. This wasn't a recent affair or a one-off mistake. No, this had been going on for 5 years. 5 years of lies. 5 years of deceit. And, most painfully, Tom knew all about it. He had known all along. When I finally managed to pull myself together and went back into the room, I couldn't look them in the eye. I felt like my world had been shattered. Every memory shared with Sarah, every moment lived over the last 5 years now felt tainted. But I didn't confront them immediately. I needed to reflect. I needed to digest everything. So I walked away, found a quiet space away from the celebration, and tried to understand what I had just discovered. The disloyalty was unbearable. I found it hard to believe that Sarah could have acted like that. But what really hurt me deeply was the role Tom played in all this. My own brother and closest confidant had kept this secret for 5 years. He had lied to me countless times face to face. He had allowed me to believe that everything was fine, that my marriage was solid, while he had known the truth all along. How could he justify such behavior? I confronted them that same night. I couldn't hold back any longer. I needed explanations. Sarah broke down almost instantly, crying as she confessed everything. She said it started as a mistake, just one night that got out of hand. She claimed she was too afraid to tell me, that she didn't want to hurt us or our children. She had confided in Tom, hoping he would help her resolve the situation. But instead, they both decided to keep me in the dark. They thought they were protecting me. Tom even had the audacity to claim that he was trying to preserve the family, and that if I discovered the truth, everything would be destroyed. But the reality is that he had already destroyed everything. In trying to protect me, he had betrayed me in the worst way imaginable. The more they talked, the angrier I became. I didn't care about their justifications. Sarah could have confessed years ago, and Tom, my own brother, should have informed me as soon as he knew. He wasn't protecting me, he was covering for her. And in doing so, he destroyed the trust I had in both of them. I couldn't bear to look at Sarah. Her mere presence made me feel sick. I told her I couldn't continue with her. There was no way I could forgive what she had done. The only reason to keep in touch would be for Emily and Max. I made it clear that divorce was the only way out. The next day, I contacted a lawyer and started the process. I couldn't go on living a lie. The situation escalated quickly. The consequences didn't just affect Sarah and me. Linda, Tom's wife, overheard part of our confrontation. At first, she didn't understand what was happening. But when I explained everything to her, she was furious. She couldn't believe that Tom had hidden something so serious, and even less so from me. She also felt betrayed. Betrayed because her husband had been complicit in covering up Sarah's affair for years. It wasn't long before she told Tom she wanted a divorce. She couldn't trust him anymore. If he was capable of hiding something like that, what else could he be hiding? Tom's world began to collapse just like mine. He thought he was saving the family. But in reality, he had destroyed his own marriage in the process. Linda packed her bags and left with Sophie. I think that was the moment when Tom realized how badly he had erred. But instead of acknowledging his mistakes, Tom came to me. He had the nerve to ask for my help. He called me saying that I owed him a favor for keeping Sarah's secret, that he had done it to protect me and my children. He begged me to talk to Linda, to convince her to give him another chance. He thought that as his brother, I should help him rebuild his marriage. But from my perspective, he had made his own decisions, and now he was facing the consequences. I didn't owe him anything. If anything, he owed me for years of lies and betrayal. I told him that clearly. I told him that he had dug his own grave, and that he had to face the consequences of his actions. I had my own problems to solve, and I wasn't going to waste any more time or energy on his. I'm torn. On the one hand, Tom is my brother, and despite everything, I still care about him. On the other hand, I feel he brought this situation on himself. His decision to hide Sarah's infidelity was wrong at best, and a complete betrayal of my trust at worst. So now I ask myself, am I wrong to refuse to help Tom? Should I just let him face the consequences of his actions? Or do I owe it to him as his brother to try to help him save his marriage, even though he played a part in almost destroying mine? Am I the villain for refusing to help my brother after he hid my wife's affair for 5 years? Honestly, I don't know what to do. My whole world has been turned upside down and I'm struggling to find stability. Any advice would be appreciated. Update 1. Hello everyone. After publishing my initial story, I took some time to gather my thoughts, but honestly, the confusion didn't dissipate as quickly as I had hoped. Sarah and I had already agreed to proceed with the divorce. I understood that there was no going back after what had happened. I gathered my belongings and moved to a small apartment nearby, not too far from our old residence. My priority was the children above all else. Emily and Max were my main concern during this terrible experience, and I wanted to ensure that their lives remained as stable as possible despite everything that was happening between Sarah and I. The divorce process moved quickly, or so it seemed to me. We both agreed that we wanted to move on, but Sarah continued to apologize despite everything. Her words felt empty to me now. How many times can someone apologize before it loses all meaning? She suggested therapy, but I knew that wasn't what I needed. I didn't even think it would help us. The damage was done. You don't recover from a 5-year betrayal like that. Not in my experience, anyway. I didn't even have the energy to be angry anymore. It was just over. While I was sorting out the logistics of separating our lives, Tom was still trying to contact me. Every few days, I would receive a call, a message, or even unexpected visits from him. He was desperate, begging me to help him reconcile with Linda. He really believed that if I talked to her and explained why I had kept Sarah's infidelity a secret, she might forgive him. I found it disconcerting that he thought I would intervene after everything he had done. He was no longer just my brother. He was part of the reason my marriage had collapsed. The more he asked for my help, the more I distanced myself from him. Each message or plea only reminded me of how he had betrayed me for 5 long years. He had ruined my marriage by keeping Sarah's secret. And now he was hoping I would help him fix his. No, I couldn't get involved. It wasn't my responsibility to clean up his mess. However, as time went by, I couldn't stop thinking about Linda. She had been caught just like me. I hadn't spoken to her since the initial fallout, and I was starting to feel guilty. One night, after a particularly difficult day, I decided to contact her. I sent her a simple message asking how she was. Honestly, I wasn't expecting much of a response. I assumed she would be as overwhelmed by everything as I was, but to my surprise, she replied quickly and we ended up having a long phone conversation. That conversation was revealing, to say the least. Linda told me things I didn't know, things that allowed me to see how deep Tom's deception had gone, not only towards me, but also towards her. She explained that discovering Sarah's infidelity was the final trigger, but their marriage had really been falling apart for years. Tom had become increasingly secretive. He would stay out late and give vague explanations for his whereabouts. Every time Linda questioned him, he became defensive, almost aggressive, as if she had no right to question him. His phone was always in his hand, screen down, and he would leave the room to take calls. Linda initially tried to ignore these signals, but eventually they became too obvious to be overlooked. What really broke her was how absent Tom had become in their family life. She missed important moments, birthdays, her daughter Sophie's school activities, and even their anniversary. Linda confessed to me that Sophie, who had always been close to her father, began to notice this distance. Sophie once asked Linda if her dad still loved them, breaking Linda's heart. She had tried so hard to keep her family together, but when her own daughter began to question her father's love, it was difficult to ignore the problems. Linda had long suspected, but she wanted to believe that Tom was just going through a phase, perhaps a bad patch. She had hoped that the situation would improve, but when she discovered that he had hidden Sarah's infidelity, everything made sense to her. It was no longer just about Sarah's betrayal. It was about Tom, the years of deceit, the lies, the emotional distance. Keeping that secret was the final straw, but it was far from being the only problem. During our conversation, Linda admitted that she had been considering separating from Tom for some time. She hadn't shared it with anyone, not even her closest friends, but the emotional gap between them had grown over the years. She had tried to make it work for Sophie's sake, but she was exhausted, worn out from trying to sustain a marriage, when Tom seemed to have completely distanced himself. The constant lies, the defensiveness, and now this final betrayal had all become too much for her. Discovering that he had been complicit in Sarah's infidelity had pushed her over the edge. She couldn't bear it anymore. She was determined to walk away for good. By the end of our conversation, it was clear that Linda had finished with Tom, and frankly, I couldn't blame her. She didn't show any strident or dramatic anger. She was simply tired. Tired of fighting for a marriage that had already disintegrated. Hiding Sarah's affair was not just an isolated act of betrayal. It represented the culmination of years of dishonesty and emotional neglect. Hearing all this from Linda made me realize how deep Tom's actions had gone. It wasn't just about me or Sarah. It involved years of deceit that had fractured not only my marriage, but also his. Tom had lost more than my trust. He had also lost the trust of his wife and daughter. I had spent so long trying to protect myself, as he claimed, that I hadn't even noticed that his own marriage was falling apart. After that call, I experienced a strange feeling of clarity. I was not alone in this chaos. Linda had also been caught off guard. And although it did not make my situation any easier, it did provide me with some perspective. Tom's betrayal went much deeper than I initially perceived. He had not only failed me, he had failed Linda, Sophie, and himself. In the days that followed, I stopped responding to Tom's pleas for help. I knew there was nothing I could do for him. He had made his choices, and now he had to face the consequences. I would not intervene by trying to repair his marriage, not when he had played such a significant role in destroying mine. It was time for him to face the consequences of his actions, as I had to. Currently, I am concentrating on what is next for me and my children. The divorce process is ongoing, and I am trying to create a new normal for Emily and Max. They have already been through enough difficulties, and my priority is to ensure that they feel loved and supported throughout this process. As for Tom, I don't know what will happen with him and Linda. The last I heard, she was still living with her parents and consulting a lawyer, so it seems their separation is inevitable. Looking back, I realize that this whole situation has been an awakening. Betrayal doesn't always come from where we expect it to, and sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who cause the most damage. But I have learned that you cannot carry other people's mistakes on your shoulders. Tom has made his own destiny, and now he must accept it. Update 2. Several days have passed since my conversation with Linda, and the situation seems to have calmed down. at least superficially. Tom had finally stopped bombarding me with calls and messages, and for the first time in what seemed like an eternity, I could breathe easy. With the divorce proceedings well underway, I was directing my energy towards the children, trying to ensure that they felt as normal and supported as possible in the midst of all this chaos. Sarah and I had been alternating weeks with them, and although it was difficult not to see Emily and Max on a daily basis, I knew I had to make the most of the time I had with them. This weekend, I brought them to my place for a few days. The apartment was nothing special, but it was our home now, and I wanted to make sure the kids felt comfortable. We spent the day doing simple activities, watching movies, playing board games, eating food delivered, just enjoying each other's company. After turbulent weeks, it was comforting to have moments of tranquility, even if they were fleeting. I was trying to get back to some kind of routine, trying to create some kind of normality for the children. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. I never could have anticipated the events that unfolded. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I had left the children at home while I visited the supermarket to buy provisions. I was walking through the aisles, minding my own business, when someone called my name. I turned around and, surprisingly, there was Tom. His reddened face was advancing towards me with an angry expression. Before I could even process the situation, he was facing me, shouting in the middle of the establishment. He started to rant about how I could do this to him, and that I didn't understand that he didn't want me to help him, but now I was trying to stab him in the back by talking to Linda. Initially, I was taken aback, not understanding what he was referring to. I asked him what he was talking about, trying to remain calm even though we were starting to attract attention. People were turning their heads, observing the scene. He continued shouting, insisting that I knew exactly what he was referring to. He accused me of talking to Linda behind his back and questioned whether I thought he was not aware of my actions. I felt confused and angry at the same time. I simply checked how Linda was. What did I expect? She's going through the same situation as me. I told her that he had created his own problem, Tom. He brought it on himself. Hearing this seemed to infuriate him even more. He repeated his old justification that he did what was necessary. He also added that I had always been the favorite, the model son, but he had to step in and protect the family. And according to him, now I was taking revenge by destroying his. I felt my patience running out. This was the same distorted logic he had used for weeks to justify his actions. I told him straight that he didn't protect anyone. He lied. He hid secrets. He ruined 2 families. Now he was angry because he was facing the consequences. I thought that would be the end of it, that he would finally walk away, but I was completely wrong. Tom totally lost control. Without warning, he lunged at me, punching me straight in the jaw. I staggered back, reeling, before I could react. He lunged at me again, pushing and punching wildly. The bags of groceries I was holding flew off, scattering food across the floor as I tried to defend myself. People started shouting, and in the chaos I could hear someone calling for help. Several passers-by ran over and managed to pull Tom away, dragging him backwards as I tried to get to my feet. My heart was racing, my hands were shaking with adrenaline. An employee had called the police, and before I knew it, the officers were there. Tom was still furious, held back by 2 other men who had stepped in to stop the fight. His eyes seemed wild, as if he didn't even understand what he had just done. He was enraged. But more than that, I felt exhausted. I couldn't believe the situation had reached this extreme. My own brother attacking me publicly like a madman. The police assessed the situation, trying to understand what had happened. I didn't want to create any more problems. The last thing I needed was more drama, especially with everything related to the divorce. The children had already suffered enough, and the idea of involving them in a legal conflict involving their uncle was the last thing I wanted. So when the officers asked if I wanted to press charges, I said no, I just wanted it to be over. I told the officers to make sure Tom understood that he couldn't come near me again. I made it clear that I didn't want to see him, talk to him, or hear anything more from him. They gave him a stern warning and told him he was lucky I wasn't pressing charges. Tom was then escorted from the premises, still muttering angrily. I stood there for a moment, trying to take it all in. I couldn't believe how far the situation had escalated. Just a few months ago, we were 2 brothers living our lives, our families intertwined, celebrating birthdays and holidays together. Now we were practically strangers, worse still, enemies. I collected what was left of my shopping and returned home, still shocked. As I entered, the children immediately noticed that something was wrong. I tried to hide it, to show strength, but they knew me too well. Emily, in particular, had a worried look on her face, as if she sensed that something was wrong. But I forced a smile and nodded to reassure her. I spent the rest of the night trying to forget what had happened, but it remained in my mind. I couldn't believe that Tom had crossed that line. I had expected anger, frustration, even shouting. But physically assaulting me represented a new limit. It made me realize how far the situation had really gone. The next day, I woke up to numerous messages from Sarah. Apparently, Tom had told her everything, distorting the story to make me look like the provocateur. She wanted to know why I had escalated the situation and how I had lost control so much. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Tom was trying to play the victim now, and Sarah believed him. It was unbelievable. I sent her a brief reply explaining what had really happened, but I was concise. I wasn't interested in starting an exchange on the subject. If she preferred to believe Tom, that was her problem. A few days later, I received a call from Linda. She had heard about the altercation and wanted to check how I was. She sounded exhausted, as if the whole situation was affecting her too. We talked for a while, and she confirmed what I already suspected. Tom was losing control. His behavior had become more erratic. Since our marriage began to fall apart, he had lashed out at everyone around him, desperate to find someone to blame for the disaster he had created. But the more he lashed out, the more isolated he became. Linda informed me that she was moving forward with the divorce. There was no possibility of reconciliation for her. She had consulted with a lawyer and was preparing to file the documents. Sophie, her daughter, was currently staying with her, and Linda was doing everything possible to protect her from the worst. But even Sophie had begun to notice her father's out-of-control behavior. Linda mentioned that Sophie had asked about the fight in the supermarket, having heard something about it. It made me sad to think how all this was affecting the children, especially Sophie. She didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this conflict. After the call with Linda, I experienced a strange mixture of relief and sadness. I was relieved that she had taken steps to get away from Tom, but saddened by the family destroyed in the process. That was not how things should have ended for any of us. As for Tom, I hadn't heard from him since the incident in the supermarket and hoped it would stay that way. He had crossed a line he couldn't come back from, and he had no interest in repairing our relationship. There was too much damage, too much betrayal, and now violence. Whatever fraternal bond we once shared was gone, replaced by a cold, intense distance that I doubted could ever be bridged. In the days that followed, I tried to concentrate on moving forward. The divorce was still looming, but I was doing my best to stay strong for the children. Emily and Max deserved a present and stable father, someone they could trust. That's what I was determined to be for them, regardless of any other circumstances around me. Tom had made his choices, and now he had to live with them. As for me, I had stopped looking back. It was time to move forward, rebuild my life, and concentrate on the most important people, my children. Update 3. Hello everyone. I realized that I never properly thanked you for your comments, support, and advice during this whole difficult experience. Believe me, I have read every one and they have helped me more than I can express. It's been a few days since the confrontation with Tom, and I've tried to behave as if it never happened. But no matter how hard I try to ignore it, it's hard to forget the reality that my own brother publicly assaulted me. It's one of those moments that lingers, no matter how much you wish it would go away. My parents found out about what happened between Tom and I, and they are completely disappointed in him. They feel let down and hurt, which is understandable. I mean, who wouldn't be? Both children going through divorces for different reasons, and I recognize that this has affected them too. I hadn't really considered how much all this must have impacted them until now. I plan to visit them soon with my children. As for Sarah and I, we have managed to reach certain agreements regarding the children. After all, we have needed to focus on making sure that Emily and Max are well. That has been my main priority over any other consideration at the moment. The children are staying with me. Sarah wanted to take them away, but Emily and Max insisted on staying at my house for now. I think they feel safer here, probably because I've been more present these last few weeks, trying to rebuild the broken trust when it all started. It doesn't mean that Sarah isn't trying. She has been trying hard, but I think the children are still processing everything that has happened. They have witnessed our arguments, they know about the divorce, and they are aware that circumstances are changing. I have been honest with them in an age-appropriate way, explaining that their mother and I are going through difficulties, but that we both love them deeply. Even so, it is a lot for them to take in. My daughter Emily especially has been more introverted lately. She is quieter, more reflective. She doesn't express much, but I can tell she is struggling to understand this whole situation. Max, on the other hand, seems to cope by distracting himself with video games and school friends. He has always shown greater resilience, but even he has moments where he wonders why things can't just go back to the way they were before. We have now established a schedule, and for the next few months, the children will stay with me during the week, and Sarah will have them at the weekends. We both agree that this is the best arrangement, at least for now. It provides the children with some stability and allows me to be more involved in their daily lives. Some days I feel like I can barely keep going, but I recognize that I must continue to be strong for them. I know my parents hope we will reconcile, but I doubt that will ever be possible. They have tried to mediate, suggesting we meet to talk, but I'm not ready for that. Not after everything that's happened. I'm still processing my own pain and anger, and the idea of facing Tom again, of pretending we can just talk and sort things out, seems impossible. In the meantime, I have concentrated on rebuilding my life. I have spent more time with friends, getting back in touch with people I had distanced myself from during the worst of the chaos. It has been nice to regain some normality, even if it is in small doses. But every time I think I'm making progress, something makes me go backwards. The divorce is still ongoing, and although Sarah and I agree on the children, the legal side is complicated. We are still working out the details, dividing property and determining who gets what. It is exhausting, both mentally and emotionally. Some days I feel like I am drowning in legal documents and terminology, and it is difficult to keep my composure. I guess that's where I am at the moment, just trying to get through each day. There are still many unanswered questions and many unresolved feelings. But for the first time in a long time, I'm beginning to see a way forward. It won't be easy, and I know I'll find more obstacles, but at least now I feel like I'm moving in the right direction. And for that, I am grateful.